Well, I think 30 years ago that was a general belief, and it was probably somewhat valid. Nowadays, I think it's quite the opposite. I think the greatest risk is working for someone else and turning over your self-determination to the vagaries of big business. I think that's not necessarily a safe thing to do, and we've certainly seen that over the past couple of years during the recession. I didn't make any determination early on in my career as to what I wanted to do. I simply went through the educational process that I thought I needed, both in terms of the formal education and the certifications that related to the areas that I thought would be important, not even necessarily the areas that I like. I'm a certified accountant, but I don't like accounting. But I felt it was important to be good at it so that I couldn't be fooled by numbers. So I've gone through the process initially to create a foundation. After that, it was just a matter of opportunities that presented themselves without any real sense of strategic direction. Well, I think formal education is not something that should be automatically waived or kicked to the curb. I think that it has value. I just think you have to keep it, like virtually everything else in life, in perspective. It's not going to make you successful. It does, however, provide you with some basic knowledge, and it does hopefully provide you with some credibility. You just don't want to get carried away with it. Unless you intend to be an academic, then you do need to get carried away with it. But I've certainly been around people without a lot of formal education who are very good business operators. And I've certainly been around people who really should have had some formal education that would have helped them be better business operators. So I can't make a sweeping generalization that it's good or bad.
Of course.
Well, you've basically created two very different branches in that question. One of them has to do with starting a business. One of them has to do with investing. Obviously, if you don't have money, you can't invest. It's just pretty simple. As to starting a business, sometimes money is the worst thing you can have to start a business. And you make decisions based upon the money as opposed to based upon what might be clever strategies. And it has been my experience as a principal in a venture capital fund and a managing director of a venture capital fund at one point in my career that throwing money at people's business ideas is roughly equivalent to an exercise that my partner and I call monkeys on cocaine. The more you give them, the more they want. They certainly drive better cars, but they don't necessarily have a better sense of business or make the correct decisions. So early on in developing business, I think not having money is a better way to go. And there are certainly enough opportunities now to build businesses without money, using services that are available from all sorts of entrepreneurial organizations and individuals who are willing to help. For example, it may be that you have a small company that needs a channel of distribution to get into a big box retailer. Well, no matter how much money you throw at it, you can't get there. But if you go through somebody who already has that channel of distribution, and they can pick up the telephone, and they can cause you to now enjoy that channel, suddenly your business is real, and the money will follow. So that's very different than being an investor, just in the sense of a passive investor. Obviously, you have to have capital to do that. Well, first of all, networking is a lot easier now than it used to be because of technology, obviously. And in most states, particularly Nevada, there are a lot more organizations now that are available to help startup entrepreneurs. And for example, here in Nevada, you have SGS, you have NSET, NIREC, C4 Cube. So you have the university, you have EDON. These are all people who provide services and advice to entrepreneurs. So it doesn't even require networking as much as just simply going through a Google search and saying, give me the organizations in my area that will help me with my entrepreneurial activities. It's much easier than it used to be. And moreover, beyond that, and this works now in the age of of the internet, and it worked before the internet too. You can go to people, if you can get access to them just with a cold call, people who are experienced, and just ask for help. Generally, people, if you ask for help, will try to give you help. That's just a normal thing to do in business. And you may have to be clever to get in front of them, but once there, getting access to their networks is generally not difficult. Well, actually, there was an article on me last week in the Northern Nevada Business Journal and Business Weekly, and they asked me that question, and my answer was, don't trust your gut. Get the facts before you act. And the source for that was the United States Air Force for me. That was ingrained in us. We don't go on instinct or intuition. We go on assembling all the facts before the tactics are laid out, and you act. And that runs counter to what a lot of people say. They say, oh, well, you know, just trust how you feel about it. No, I totally disagree with that. And I was ingrained as a young officer early on. Don't do that. I think that applies to business too. No, I've lived through lots of recessions. You know, it's cyclical, as we all know, and everybody touts this one as being the worst since the Great Depression. Well, you should have been around in the late 70s and early 80s when the prime rate exceeded 22% and home mortgages exceeded 14%. And that's not necessarily the kind of recession we're in right now, because that's obviously hyperinflation. But do you think it was easy to operate a business in those days? It wasn't. Just as interest rates now are virtually zero, interest rates then were the other end of the spectrum. That's a different problem with the same effect. Hard to run business. During those periods of times, I grew businesses, ran them, built them up, and sold them off. You just change your strategy to adjust to whatever the environment is. So I don't think it's a good excuse, no.